the Nashville 2 podcast with your host, Edward Fox.
G'day, viewers and listeners. It's Ed Fox back with another great episode of Nashville 2. And if you know somebody that needs to be on the show, they need to be talked about. We need to find out what they're doing, whether it be mentoring after school, whether it be a nonprofit, a business, somebody that is just making a difference in the Middle Tennessee community. I'd love to have them on the show. Make sure that they reach out through Nashville2.com. They can register to be on the show. And my special guest today is Gary Rainford. And Gary, are you originally from Tennessee?
Actually, no, we're not from Tennessee. We are Hoosiers, and from those of you who may not know what a Hoosier is, we grew up and raised our family in the great state of Indiana.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've heard the term, but I wasn't sure. You know, I'm an Australian. I follow cricket and rugby, and but I did go to a Titans game last year, and that was pretty much fun. So I'm learning. So now you've got an interesting story about getting to Nashville. Like, you're collecting all of your family members in the Middle Tennessee area, correct?
That is correct. That's exactly what we've been doing for the last couple of years.
And I was able to meet your wonderful daughter, Jill. And do you have more than one wonderful daughter?
We do. We have 4 children altogether, 2 wonderful sons and 2 wonderful daughters. And you ask about moving this area.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we all decided, my wife and I had always wanted our family to live in proximity with each other, if that worked out. So we found ourselves with households in the Chicago area, households in the Central Florida, and one out in Los Angeles. So over the last couple of years, 3 households have come from the Chicago suburbs, 3 households from Central Florida. 2 of those are lovely daughters.
Right.
And then we still have the one holdout, and if he's watching this, the one holdout out in Los Angeles because he's interested in television and movies, and he's working for NBC Universal.
Gotcha. Well, Georgia is doing a lot with TVs and movies, and then we've got a couple of movie studios, Christian movie studios in Nashville too, that are doing things. So, and
Yes.
in Franklin as well. I know the Jesus Revolution guys live in Franklin. Or their movie studios in Franklin, something like that. So that is awesome, bringing all your family together. Mine's spread out too. We moved to Nashville a couple of years ago. Love it. Middle Tennessee, I guess. I used to call it Nashville Metro. Now that I've been here 3 years, it's long enough to know that I should be calling it Middle Tennessee. So we're getting there.
Same here.
So tell me a little bit about your background, Gary. What has been for years? What has been what you do to make a living?
Right. So I spent about 3 decades in IT in many different industries. I worked in automotive manufacturing industry for some years. Had the good fortune to work for a ministry for a while, and I worked in healthcare for about a decade. But all of that has been with an IT bent.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and now you've moved into this field. I got to meet you. I got to meet your daughter first, and then you guys came to my BNI group a couple of weeks ago,
Yes.
and were there. And I loved your 30-second commercial on what you do. So tell us a little bit about what is Crestcom and what do Gary and Jill do, and what your company does.
Right. So Crestcom's an organization that has been in business for about 35 years. And they develop content to help people sharpen their leadership skills. What they did was they looked at what are leadership skills that CEOs and presidents around the world like,
Right.
with surveys. And usually that list, those surveys usually come back with a pretty common list. And I like to ask people what that list is, but then I say, well, it's communication, and then some other things like troubleshooting. And
So what are you trying to say, Gary? What are you trying to say?
Well,
I don't understand.
well, I'm trying to learn how to communicate. That's what it's all about.
Right.
So they've developed the curriculum for these leadership skills, and like I say, they're in over 60 countries. It's been translated into over 20 languages, and over their 35 years, they have over 50,000 companies in their database, including a lot of companies on the list of Fortune's most admired companies. So
Right.
Crestcom has been very intentional about developing a curriculum and continuing to update that curriculum. For example, a few years ago, they came out with a module about multi-generations, because gosh, what was happening in the workplace? We had 50 and 60-year-olds sometimes reporting to 30-year-olds or vice versa. So
Right.
they came out with the curriculum to help address that. And then this year, they came out with another module specifically for diversity and inclusion. We know this has been a topic in the country for at least a couple of years. It was a topic that I really appreciated their intentional and thoughtful approach to it, knowing that it would be, because the curriculum is consistent around the world. So they had to come up with a module that was respectful and thoughtful, but yet addressed any country that it might be in, any language it might be translated into, and any different cultural situations that it might be shared with around the world.
Right. And I think sometimes if my kids grew up in a small town in southern central Kansas, but were exposed to a lot of different cultures. And as we know, those different ethnicities, different nationalities have a different way of doing things a lot of the times, and being able to adapt to that. So with you in that field, who is the sort of the client that Crestcom serves?
Right. So the clients that we serve, they aren't necessarily industry specific.
Okay.
We're looking for companies that may range from 20 employees up to 400. If you get past that, yeah, and even though we have done some of that work in larger companies, but most of the time, if you get past that size of company, 300, 400, 500 employees, the organization has their own group that is developing leadership skills. So we really target more than an industry. We target just companies anywhere from 20 people to 400, because once you start to get in 20 people and more, you're probably going to have a layer or two of supervisors, managers, directors, or people at the C level. So now you have a situation where people are leading other people, and of course that exists even if there aren't titles, even if it isn't an actual org structure. People that lead other people, it's just leadership's just influence, really, in its very simplest form. So
Yeah.
We're all influencing others in one way or another.
So in the Nashville market, so this was predominantly listened to in the Nashville market, or people looking to come to Nashville in some segment. When you're doing those 20 employees and above, and like you said, it's not industry specific, right?
Right.
One of the things that I really enjoyed was the way that you made the message stand out. So if you were standing up in front of a group of people and going to give them your 30-second pitch today, what would that look like?
Right. So the 30-second pitch, similar to what you heard in the meeting that we were at, and my daughter Jill actually came up with this. But what we're looking to do is to address what she calls the magic weekend. Now, even though I've studied leadership for almost 20 years, I'd never heard of the magic weekend. I actually experienced the magic weekend, even though I didn't know it was called that. Here's the magic weekend. In my case, as you've already asked, my specialty was IT. I had a lot of really specialized training in IT. I was on a Cisco track, well-known company, and I had a lot of the nuts and bolts of how Cisco worked. Well, I went home on a Friday, very well educated in the workings of Cisco gear, and I came back in on Monday. Still had that job, by the way, but I came back in on Monday, and all of a sudden I had people reporting to me. And boy, I just had the best intentions of people that were going to be reporting to me. But guess what? I never had a class on emotional intelligence. I never had a class on focus. I never had a class on storytelling. I never had a class. We're doing one this in August on unconscious bias. I never had any of that sort of training. And we don't propose that Crestcom or Jill or myself will make people masters at any of that, but a little focused attention, a couple hours thinking about it, and then some after class work we do think will help the leaders get better. And a phrase that we've stolen from a leadership conference we go to every year is that when the leader gets better, everybody wins. It's kind of hard to argue with that.
Right. And you and I sat at Panera. I sort of crashed a meeting that you and Jill were doing with my friend Dan Phillips. Yeah. And so, the fact that I talked about what I look for in a leader is somebody that is there to help his team or her team do better, right? How can this person as a leader add value to his team members that allows his team members to do their job better, right?
Right.
And you and I got into that conversation, and that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is I think there's a lot of value, even the basic things of basic people skills, that Dale Carnegie wrote about in 1936, or Les Giblin wrote about in the 70s and 80s. Even there's a book that I really like for relationship building called His Needs, Her Needs, Building an Affair-Proof Marriage from, I think it came out in 81, and is a marriage book, but marriage is a relationship, just like leadership and employees and friends and every other relationship. And I found it really helpful. What sort of stuff have you read in the past, or do you recommend that could help people? Maybe it's less than 20 employees. Maybe they've got 1 to 5 employees or 5 to 10 employees.
Right.
You recommend?
Right. So there are many writings on this. For a while, I thought maybe I would write a book about that, but there are so many great books out there already. An author that maybe not many people have heard of is James Hunter. And James Hunter wrote a book called The Greatest Leadership Principle, and it's all about servant leadership. Another author that I've read that may not be well known, his name's James Autry, who also wrote about that topic. There's an author that wrote about, many authors have written about emotional intelligence. One of my favorites, believe it or not, is Jim Collins, and that's a name that maybe a few more people are familiar with. Jim Collins is probably best known for his book Good to Great. When I ask people in organizations, have you heard of Good to Great? Most people, they've at least heard of the book. And interesting story about Jim and that book, told by himself. Jim was absolutely convinced that there would not be a chapter in his book about leadership. I actually have his book right here in front of me. There will be no leadership chapter in my book because leadership is not the answer to moving companies from good to great. And it's interesting because it sounds like his research staff, and he had several people on his research staff, they actually have what amounted to an intervention with him one day because they were just looking at all the data of these 1,500 companies and trying to sort out what are the differences. And they recognized that there were some key leadership principles that were consistent with all 11 companies that were considered in the great. And he was adamant. It was turned into an argument. But the thing about Jim Collins, and the reason I have hold him in such high regard, is he looked at what the evidence was, and he was and is willing to admit he was wrong. To me, that gives him a lot of credibility. I'll read anything he puts out because he was a big enough person to say, I was wrong. Leadership matters. Now, they were very specific in their leadership chapter about what kind of leadership moved those companies. And the 2 key elements for those people who might not remember are desire to win, but a passionate desire to win for the organization, not for the individual. And then the second one, which I think was a surprise to a lot of people, was deep humility. The leaders of those companies were not looking for their own headline. They were looking to make their companies great. So that's just a few of the ones that I might recommend, but you can never go wrong with the Jim Collins book based on what I've read all of his stuff.
There you go. And that I just wrote down those, the Good to Great. I've heard it, but I've never read it. So I was looking for something new to read. I just finished Never Lunch Alone, which was really cool because networking and making connections for me has been the best way for me to grow my business in all over the world. which is one of the reasons I do the podcast, because I get to meet so many interesting people and things going on that I'm like, hey, you need to tell your story. So a question that I've started asking is, what is it that you've found the biggest difference moving to Middle Tennessee from where you've lived in the past that you would put in the plus column?
As a business owner, it can be tiring paying cash for everything you need. Well, there's a better way. Introducing Trade Bank of Nashville. Our bartering service lets you exchange goods and services without the need for cash transactions. Trade Bank helps businesses like yours reduce expenses, bring in new business, and keep your cash where you need it most. Find out more and join our barter network today. Start getting what you need without paying cash, because sometimes barter is just smarter. Apply today at nashville.tradebank.com.
Well, we really appreciate the people and the culture. Again, we're from Indiana. We spent some time in a big metro area. And after coming from that big metro area and then coming here, to us, it almost feels like still a bit of a small town. So many people know so many people. And so many people, just like yourself, are willing, if we meet and say, hey, how about we just sit down and have a cup of coffee? So many people are willing to do that. It seems to be, and we're still new, but it seems to be that relationships really matter here. And we are looking to build genuine, authentic relationships, partner with people, and that seems to be well received here. Maybe I'll find out I'm wrong, but that is the biggest difference from my perspective.
Yeah, I hear, and people say in virtually every city I've ever lived or been that I networked, oh, we're a networking city, we're a relationship building city. And to a degree, they're all correct. However, Nashville and Middle Tennessee to me has been the most networking, not superficial relationship. Oh, here's my business card, here's your business card, let's do lunch sometime, which tends to be the rest of the world. But Nashville, if they say to me, let's do lunch sometime, they follow that up with, well, when would you like to do that? You know,
right.
And they're very intentional.
Yeah, and let me just say, for anybody that might listen to this podcast that doesn't know this man, Edward Fox, he's walked the walk. I've just been in, 4 or 5 different areas in my life. This man's been all over the world, and he has spent a lot of time in a lot of places. So when I heard him say that for the first time, it's like, okay, this just like Jim Collins has a lot of credibility. This man has a lot of credibility when it comes to that. So I think
thanks, Gary.
And it's true. It really is. And so it's good to know that someone like you says something like that about this area. It's no wonder that so many people want to come to this area.
Yeah, and it is. And even with the huge influx of the numbers coming from California and New York, most of them are coming to get away from policies and different things that they don't agree with. And so they're integrating well into the fabric. Now, there's still a couple of things that they've got to figure out, right? It's like when you go walk out of the grocery store, you can tell the difference between somebody from New York and LA as opposed to somebody from Middle Tennessee, because they will stop the traffic and let you walk across and they'll wave you across. The Californians and the New Yorkers some of them haven't quite figured that out, in fact,
100%. 100%. We saw the same thing when we moved here.
Exactly.
We didn't know what to do with it at first. It's like, wait, are you sure?
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to run me over once I start across?
Right.
What's the deal? So for me, I still sometimes, being originally from Australia, I say Australian by birth, American by choice. I was walking through a Kroger and I had the buggy. I think they call it a buggy, not a trolley or a cart down here. And I almost ran over a little old lady and she goes, oh, bless your heart. I said, oh, thank you very much. And she goes away and my wife says, that's not what you think it means. That doesn't mean what you think it means. So I had to learn that bless your heart is like, you're an idiot, get out of the way. So, bless your little pea picking heart, although bless your heart could be nice in the right context, right? So anyway, so when you're not working, Gary, what are we like to do a hidden gems segment. You've been in Nashville, or you've been in Middle Tennessee for a little while. what are some of the things that you and your family like to do, or go to hang out, or some things that you found that other people should know about?
Well, we like to hang out together, and we actually like to go to restaurants, but we've backed off that a little bit, because when our group shows up, we say, "You have a spot for 18 people?" So we don't know if that's always the nicest thing to do. But I'll tell you, one of the spots that we discovered that I love, and no pun intended, but that's Just Love. I just got back from Just Love down
Which
in
one?
Franklin,
Oh,
Cool
yeah.
Springs.
Yep.
And we'd never heard of it. And I'll tell you, here's how much I like it. I had to make several trips back and forth by vehicle to Florida when we were in the process of coming here, because 3 households came from Florida. I was arranging my driving schedule around stopping at a Just Love, because I found one down in Valdosta, Tennessee, just off the Valdosta, Georgia, excuse me, just off the interstate. And I was like, hey, it's a Just Love. So we didn't know about Just Love. We discovered Just Love when we got here. And I guess pun intended at this point, we do just love it. My compliments to them.
I love a good pun. I was there's another place of mine, and so let's talk about Just Love for a second. I love Just Love, and I go to the one at Cool Springs, Aspen Grove, underneath the Williamson County Chamber, in that building with Mitsubishi and stuff. That's the one you're talking about, right there on Aspen Grove. Yes. Yeah, and that's one of
we've been to several, but yes, that's the one I just came
that's
from.
my favorite. And then my other favorite, and it's probably because the barista gets my order right every single time, and it's delicious. And that was the one on the west side of Murfreesboro. There's a couple in Murfreesboro, one by the fountain, and then one out west. And the one out west is great. And then my third one is Brentwood. So I go to Brentwood, Cool Springs the most often. So Cool Springs, you walk in, and they're always asking for a dad joke. You know, I've got my little dad joke doll and my round tuits and my dad joke stickers. But the other place I found, if you like fast casual Mediterranean, there's this place called Peter Way in Cool Springs that does like quesapitas, like a quesadilla, but it's got gyro meat or chicken on it. And that's run by Kim and her husband Chad. And I think two boys and a girl, all three of them work there. I think the daughter is off at school, and so when she's back, but Peter Way. So I walked in there the other day. They said, "Oh, you got a new dad joke for me?" And I said, "I do actually." I said, "Did you hear about the police that found a dead man in a vat of ground chickpeas?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, the police are considering it a homicide." You know, it's Mediterranean. You got to have hummus, right?
Oh, my goodness. That's just not even nice.
I know, but they laughed, and that's, that was nice. And then I said, okay, I got to follow up. I said, black-eyed peas can sing a tune. Chickpeas can only hummus one.
Oh, man. Did they go ahead and serve you after those bad jokes?
I make sure I get my food first. So my site is I'm TikTok and YouTube and Instagram is Special Ed Fox Dad Jokes. And so they call me Special Ed all the time. And so some people give me a look like, why are you using that? I said, well, I've worked with a lot of kids that do special ed curriculum when I teach the game of cricket, right? Bat and ball sport, British bat and ball sport. Hey, Michael, come on in and meet Gary. He was at our BNI the other day. So Michael is a member at BNI. Hey, Michael, you're on the bottom of my screen. I'll bump you up to the middle there. So this is what I love to do on this podcast. Sometimes when people come in, they hear me talk and they jump out. So they think, oh goodness, I'm late, but you're actually on time. So, but Gary, so Peter Way, you've got Just Love. I love that. Are you a Just Love fan, Michael?
As in Just Love the coffee?
Yeah. You're not a coffee drinker, are you?
I'm not a coffee drinker.
Okay. But you like hanging out at Just Love's. I know you do some meetings there.
I do. It's a very nice place.
Yeah. So Gary and I, so it's unanimous. The three of us agree. Gary, you got 2 other hidden gems for me, and we'll let you go.
Well, I've got one that I just recently discovered. I believe it's called 1819. And
yes. Spring Hill, Thompson
goodness.
Station. Yeah.
Down by Thompson Station. I mean, what a fantastic place that one is.
And is
if
that
you-
a
if you're not
church
familiar.
run? Is that a church run coffee shop?
I don't know much about it. I don't know if it's church run, but I do know that they are people of faith.
Yep.
And that is pretty evident when you're in there. And I do think they also have a special concern for people that might be struggling with difficult thoughts. Put
Yeah.
it that way.
It is a great coffee shop. I love that one too. Okay, so I see there's a theme here in the coffee. You got it. You got a third one for us?
I don't have. Sorry, I don't have a third
That's okay.
coffee place for you.
Well, wouldn't have to be a coffee place. So what do you guys do when you're not working, you're hanging out with family? Are you a hiking crew? Like, do the 18 of you go hiking, or what do you do?
We are not a hiking crew, but we mostly just get together and spend time trying to support each other as a family.
Right.
But I will tell you about a really fun thing that you may have to cut. I don't know if it was right for us to do this, but over the 4th, my son-in-law created, I think he called it a potato gun.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Have you seen these things?
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
PVC pipe, and it took a little while to get it working, but we were shooting at a watermelon, and it was something that even the kids could try, and no harm was done except the watermelon did have a rough day, but no harm was done to any people or animals, and so we just like to hang out and do fun things like that, and that's how we spend our time. I personally, I like to get my grandsons in particular aside and play them a game of Stratego to start challenging their competitive thought and getting them to think strategically. No, can't be too young to start thinking strategically.
No, I like that. I was going to ask you if you were board gamers, because one Thanksgiving I sat down with a bunch of our family members, and one of them is an only child. So like one of the wives was an only child. And so my wife grew up with like 7. My mom and dad were 6 and 7. And so the first thing you do when you sit down to play Monopoly, you spend 30 minutes going over what rules you're going to play by. And
exactly.
She's like, when's the game going to get started? I said, no, you don't understand. If we don't clarify the rules, we all play by different rules when it comes to Monopoly. If we don't clarify the rules, it will just break out into a fight. And we spent so long clarifying the rules that she got up and left. She said, I can't handle this.
I'm done.
Yeah, but I am
I'm
definitely a big gamer and very competitive. You don't let your grandsons win, right?
Depends on their age.
Okay.
The one that I played with most recently is 6.
Oh.
And I was really giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then he was getting better, and now he has beat me twice when I was playing my best.
Well, good.
And he won't let me forget it.
Awesome. Well, Gary, hey, can you come back on the show again, and so we can dig deeper into some different areas of your life outside of Crestcom and work? I would love to dig into your faith and dig into that sort of stuff, if you'd be open to coming back and doing that at some point.
Privilege would be mine. Michael, sorry for taking some of your time.
No, it's all good. And I love 1819 Coffee. That place is great.
Good. I hope I didn't take one of your hidden charms from you.
Oh, that's okay. We can just use that as well. And because you're down that neck of the woods, aren't you, Michael? You're down in that area.
I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, thanks for being on the show. We'll leave it there, and then Michael and I will pick it up.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day, you guys.
You bet. Bye-bye.
This is the Nashville 2 podcast with your host, Edward Fox.